Okay, is it okay if I'm sitting or should I stand? Would you prefer? It's fine? You can see me, you can hear me. Okay, good. Well, I'm starting with this image just to remind us the context in which we are, and then in which I would like also to frame the presentation, which is, the fact that we are consuming more planets than what we have, and also that this eternal economic growth is certainly incompatible with the limits of the planet. And also, maybe we need to remember that this ecological disaster is too big and complex to be solved by the existing capitalist political economic structure. And this is for several reasons. One is that, many of these structures have interest in maintaining the current mode of production, and also the existing way of making and implementing public policies doesn't have the capacity to follow and react quickly enough to the rapid ecological deterioration of the planet. And in this context, perhaps commons or the commons paradigm suggests an alternative solution. And I would like to discuss a little bit about this. Commons are defined as a social system in which resources are shared by a community of user or producer who also define the mode of use and production, distribution and circulation of these resources through a democratic and horizontal form of governance. And commons are built on relations of collective care, regeneration, and resilience. And for this reason, they can contribute to the planetary ecological repair and provide perhaps an alternative to the extractive and exploitative relations of the capitalist economy. There are traditional commons, pastures, forests, rivers, lakes, and so on. Urban commons, and also other newly created commons, such as the digital commons and so on. And in a capitalist society, which has been developed specifically on principles of commons enclosure, privatization, and unrestricted exploitation of resources, many of the traditional commons have disappeared, and many of the newly created commons are currently obstructed and under threat. According to Antonio Negri and Michael Hard, the contemporary revolutionary political project would be to capture, divert, and appropriate, and also reclaim the commons as a key constituent process. And somehow, fighting against the enclosure of the existing commons and the newly created commons as architects, planners, urban designers, can be one of these constituent processes that Negri and Hard are speaking about, which is a process that should reinvent new ways of living collectively in our cities and further, perhaps, on the planet. One of the questions that I want to address in this talk is what are the commons in social housing estate, and why it's important to reclaim them and to sustain them. And maybe I will start by remembering that, in the French context, when we speak about social housing estates, we need to mention the Grand Ensemble, the big government mass housing program in mainly suburban areas of big cities that started in the 50s and 60s to answer the post-war housing crisis, and also the need for rapid development of those cities. So architects had an important role in the design of the Grand Ensemble, which were planned by expert teams usually in a top-down manner, being completely funded and managed by the state. This was in fact the strength of this approach to implement social programming quickly and at a big scale, yeah? This top-down kind of approach, putting together experts, architects, planners, sociologists, building companies, political representatives, and giving them the means to decide, plan, and build while implementing the best actionable knowledge of that time. And it was indeed one of the ideal situations to implement the modernist emancipatory project as it was, and it was perceived as such, and this was the ideal condition, you know, for experts to act. In addition to housing, the social project of the Grand Ensemble implied also the construction of collective equipments, des équipements collectifs, a mix of basic public services, community and welfare institutions, and private amenities intended to transform housing estates into new neighborhoods. So schools, sport halls, health centers, cultural facilities were planned and built according to a grid of repartition of, at different scales. And today, when there is no welfare state anymore, the social program has been drastically diminished in France, as many of you know. However, 10.7 million of HLM, the social housing estates, which represent a fifth of the French urban population, still lives in HLM. Which are these low-rent council housing that remains the dominant typology of collective housing estates. So many of these estates have become ZUS, zones urbaines sensibles, which are areas of social and economic deprivation most of the time, and that are poorly designed and densely built, and they are lacking also green space, becoming also true hidden island. 4.5 million of persons live today in this zone urbaine sensible, which means 7% of the French population. And these are areas located in the former Grand Ensemble, most of them, of the 70s. In addition to the social problems, they struggle today to adapt also to the current and future global challenges. So in the 80s, the solution was to tear them down. But today, in the most critical area, particular residents amongst the most excluded, mostly youngers, tend to destroy. We know these upheavals that are taking place in the suburban cities. Yeah, so they literally start to burn down the public amenities and furniture. So since the 80s, the question of mass housing regeneration has started to be addressed through different approaches, mostly in a top-down manner, being financed via the Agence Nationale pour la Rénovation Urbaine, with public or private developers that are involved. But these programs are failing most of the time to take into account the interest of the residents. And today, we know that any form of urban regeneration of these neighborhoods needs to be part of a resilient transition, which should include both social and ecological aspects, and very important, the participation of the inhabitants themselves. So the inhabitants should be involved in the governance of these regeneration processes, not only as simple participants. They need to become stakeholders if we want these neighborhoods to become resilient. In more traditional context, rural context, most of the Eleonor Ostrom work has very, very clearly demonstrated that the mode of governance through commons, based on care and responsibility, is the best approach for ecological reparation and resilience at different levels. But in urban context, commons also might offer an alternative to the current urban regeneration approaches. So this alternative should involve not only refurbishing derelict housing estates and renovating physical infrastructure, as it is the case now, but also repairing broken social relations, altered subjectivities, depleted imaginaries, unjust politics and uneven economics, as well as empowering communities to participate in this repairing of their neighborhoods. So I will somehow address this question by introducing the case of Rurban, which is one of the projects that I was involved with with Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée. We can describe it as a commons-based network of civic resilience implemented in Parisian suburbs, and a network which consists in resilience hubs located in mass housing estates that are collectively managed by inhabitants. And this project is a sort of both practice-based research, but also research-based practice. Yeah, so it kind of covers the idea of research from both ways. Something which is very important in this approach is the idea of a civic hub. Which is the key element in this model of, let's say, regeneration, which is a form of collective equipment or an equivalent of the collective equipment in the Grand Ensemble. So if the collective equipments were carefully planned and programmed by with these major public investments through the grid system, and they were part of an urban design approach, which included also the design of public infrastructure and public space. The hubs, are a sort of equipment which is self-sustained and citizen-run. It's very much based on the participation and investment of the citizen, and constitute places where change can be tested collectively. They become resources also of the neighborhoods. They can take different functions. They take advantage also of the planning of the housing estates that preserves a lot of empty spaces between buildings, and these spaces which are currently understood as poorly and they are poorly maintained, are important resources where nature can be nurtured and ecological cycles can be developed. Also, we know that the suburban neighborhoods were built through the urbanization of rural and productive territories, and the urban hubs are bringing back somehow the rural into the city and valorize the ecological resources. Another important element is the participation and the emergence of social and ecological stakeholders. So if the collective equipments were publicly funded and managed, the urban hubs are managed as commons, providing collective resources for the community and enabling the members of the community to develop resilience practices. They are run and partially funded with civic contribution, mostly in kind, voluntary work. And the process of voluntary participation and commoning is in fact at the core of the functioning of these hubs. So the network of hubs, which grows organically in each local context, is a different solution than the planified grid. If in the grand ensemble there was this idea of equipment to have the role in the animation of the dwelling complex, sometimes with a very limited participation of the user, and this only in the most radical approaches, the urban network introduces this idea of commons-based governance with a fundamental active posture of the inhabitant. So it involves also aspects of urban design, but with a responsible and active participation of the citizens in the co-design and the co-construction process. And something which is very, very important is that the urban hubs bring also this other dimension which was not at all present and tackled in the grand ensemble philosophy, the idea of a local ecological and economic layer, which is important in the resilient transition. And the urban approach proposes that the hubs create these ecological loops and circular economies in the grand ensemble, involving the community to work on the economic renewal and ecological repair of the neighborhood. So this commons-based hub proved to be an important tool in this alternative model of mass housing regeneration, providing the physical infrastructure, the resources, and the space where commoning and resilience can be learned, practiced, and valued. And their architecture also is very important because it integrates a number of ecological devices that make visible and measurable the resilience activities, like, for example, food and energy production, water, waste, and carbon reduction. And compared with other network models, the hub-based model draws also on the architect's skills and knowledge, putting design and design thinking in the center of the commons-based resilience strategy. So affordable and technically easy to build and manage. The hubs can be also easily reproduced by other communities in almost any kind of neighborhood context, in France, in Europe, and also maybe beyond this. So with this model, we had a first implementation in 2000. They started in 2011 in Colombes, which is a suburban town in the northwest of Paris. It has been done through a partnership with the city, with the municipal team at that moment. And was funded through a European program called Life Plus for environmental governance. And through this program, 3 hubs were planned in Colombe. It was like a prototype of a urban network with a hub for urban agriculture, AgroCité, another for recycling and eco-construction, RE-DWELL, and a hub about cooperative housing, eco-hub. They were all meant to be built on public land, and they were planned to be located at walking and biking distance from each other, and to enable in this way the circulation of food waste and recycled materials, the repair goods, people, knowledge, and cultural exchanges also at the level of the neighborhood. Between 2011 and 2016, there were almost 7,000 citizens that participated in these sites. Only 2 of them have been built at the end during the 5 years of European project. AgroCité, which was the hub for civic agriculture, pedagogy, and ecoculture. It was in fact a sort of micro-farming that had community garden plots, but also a building that was constructed from recycled wood, and to house a cafe, a teaching space, a market, and a greenhouse. And it was meant to be an ecological and education site for community learning. And it generated a sort of interest from participants to start to set up their own small businesses and to generate income for themselves, but also there were a lot of collective activities that were that generated collective income that was put back in the collective pot. The RE-DWELL was a community recycling and eco-construction hub that was constructed with second-hand materials. It was made of repurposed shipping containers that were used at the ground floor, and the first floor was built out of wood with local companies. And the structure housed workshops, material storage space, design studio, a cafe, and a garden deck. You can see a little bit, maybe the specificity of this is that it has been set up on an existing road that was closed before. Again, the location was typical maybe for a future where lots of roads, will be closed because we won't have as many cars as we have today. Both these 2 hubs established a system of reducing carbon emission, harvesting and using rainwater, composting organic waste, and collecting and recycling other urban waste, creating immaterial flows, material and immaterial flows, such as knowledge transmission and care practices, social exchanges, and also creating a number of green hubs, green jobs. Also, I think, and this is the kind of architecture power. They were showcasing all these ecological processes through the construction, through the use of materials. We have recycle and reuse a lot of the construction materials. So in a way that made visible and tangible to the users all these principles that we were speaking about, so they can see and live the consequences of, for example, using a passive heating system, creating multifunctional spaces, like the greenhouse, for example, was also used, was the biggest space that was used for other things like workshops and meetings. Rainwater, of course, was collected and then used for the garden watering, and this will show how the consumption of water can be reduced. We had also this green, the phytofiltration, so to say, of the gray water system, but also green roofs and walls that will use the rainwater for watering, and in the Recyclab, we have reused containers that were very easy to remove in case of, let's say, incident, because the whole servicing pipes would pass underneath the road. So this was a legal condition to be able to remove the whole building in 48 hours. Of course, we have used biomaterials and semi prefabricated structure, protecting also the existing green canopy on the road, but also creating a specific configuration that had its advantages, like this very nice terrace, and the proximity of the trees. But what is very, very important is the collective governance aspect, which it's is the key element in a commons approach, because both hubs were organized as civic organization, Association 1901. And each type of activity, compost, recycling, cuisine, gardening, bookkeeping, repairing, were managed by a collective of active members who were passionate about these practices. And the thematic collectives organized around each of activity, and they were represented in the governance structure. Together with AAA and the city, and the decisions were taken during general assemblies, as this one, where all hub members will participate, and this would take place 4 times a year. And somehow this governance format was also part of a co-design process. We have co-design from the very beginning, acknowledging that, for example, a type of circuits that can involve the hub, using the collective intelligence, so to say, of the members. But also there were moments in which we brought other participants in the process, to give punctual input. This is a moment of students from Sheffield coming during a live project and working with inhabitants in a process of co-design different modules and tools that were useful for each of these thematic groups that I have mentioned. There were also moments of collective, and shared knowledge. Like this is a repair cafe where those that, it's a format that exists in other places, but those that have knowledge about technical knowledge will repair stuff for those that don't, or they have things to repair, but in the process, knowledge is passed on, somehow is transferred. Bicycle repair, of course. There were also a sort of flea markets, or as alternative and economic formats. Again, shared knowledge sessions. Involving people in the communication and labeling of the different products that were produced in the hub, involving people as co-researchers. So this was a research project about digital governance, and of course creating interfaces with them for this. Moments of valorizing local culture as well. Bringing knowledge also, so these were seminaries and presentations of different aspects that people were interested in, like recycling, for example, or cooperatives were presented. So interveners from outside, from the universities, academics would be invited to come in these places and to give talks. There were also intergenerational workshops taking place, and again, multicultural presences, presentations of the emerging local initiatives, like here at Resi Club, there were small commercial initiatives that took place. It's a group that were recycling furniture and transforming it into newly designed products. Again, talks in which students from Paris will come to listen. Speakers, I think here is Gilles Clément, for example. And again, this will open up this very local hub to a wider public. Flea markets, again. And during these activities, a number of social and ecological entrepreneurs would emerge during the repair cafes, recycling workshops. There were designers also in the residence, programs of coaching, moments of participative pedagogy, a local material database set up, In Agrocité, there was a local shop and a cafe that emerged. Moments of skill sharing, as I have mentioned. There was also a farm market where some of the products that were produced here were sold, but also a farmer from the outskirts would come also and deliver his products. Training sessions, mutual help also, and a number of seminars. And this is one story that would exemplify these dynamics, which is the story of Yvonne, who was doing worm compost in his basement, and we have built a worm farm for him, and also he set up a compost school that got accreditation. And he has formed, I think, few hundreds of compost masters, Benoit being one, an inhabitant of the area, and he set up a compost scheme in the neighborhood, but others were supported in other type of activities like beekeeping, holding the local market, the recycling and eco-construction, a cooperative canteen also. And this is how the space would look like in 2013. And during all these processes, we also realized that it's very challenging to set up and sustain commons-based transition into a capitalist society, which doesn't have anything, no legislation, no political support to sustain in time such initiatives. And we realize that it's very difficult to advocate bottom-up governance of an urban estate, also in a society which is used with marketing and management of the city, understanding governance as a service, not as a collective caring duty. And the social project of the 60s is different today. Yeah? Parts of the mass housing estates are privatized, and this approach is usually sold to citizens by the local governments as urban mixity. And it was the case in Colombes, in the neighborhood where Agrocité, one of the hubs, was located. The neighborhood started a process of urban regeneration, which was part of one of these en route programs. And paradoxically, it was in the name of this regeneration that the newly elected mayor, right-wing mayor, justified the need for Agrocité to be demolished and evicted. And in June 2015, the mayor decided to replace Agrocité with a temporary private car park, and she expressed intention to demolish also the Recyclab, the other hub that was built at the time, in order to clear the land for future city projects. And somehow this situation confirms that the setting up of urban commons today is not only a social, economic, and ecological project, but also a political project. And it is clearly subverting the capitalist order in its dominant modes of production. And it's also about reclaiming and capturing resources that that are embedded in the capitalist transactions and redirecting them into commoning dynamics. And when the right-wing mayor asked for the demolition of the two hubs through a litigation procedure at the Tribunal Administrativ, it was, of course, a challenging moment for the urban community and for us also as designer and initiator of all this process. So we had to quickly learn how to organize resistance through press campaign and protests. And we learn also from this situation that the absence of protecting laws force us to as architects, to learn other skills that are not only for designing and building, but also for defending the urban commons and for making them resilient in adverse condition. And we know that what happened in Colombia, in fact, is not new. These things are happening across the globe. Urban commons are continually under threat. And we were not prepared enough, I think. So we lost the case in court. And in February 2017, we had to, the Agrocité started to be demolished and to be dismantled. And this is how the site evolved. So the whole kind of ecological approach in improving the land, making it productive, went away, was completely dismissed. But in the absence of protecting laws, we took inspiration from Aikido, for example, and we learned that one can be resilient by, like in blending, in order to stop the attack, you have to move around the punch, and this is what we did. We moved around the punch, and instead of simply demolishing the building, we have negotiated its dismantling. It's intelligent dismantling and the relocation in Gennevilliers, which is a neighborhood city in a left-wing municipality. We used the fact that Agrocité was purposely designed for a reversible installation that would incorporate resilience principles, such as the possibility of dismantling and reassembling. We managed to use most of the material that, like 95% of the initial material in a fully cradle-to-cradle manner. But not only the material, but also the people. The former members of Agrocité became proactive in maintaining and relocating the functions while the infrastructure was not there yet. And they became now the experts of the project and the political agents, we can say, participating in the reinstallation, but also explaining, advocating for the project to the newcomers. So here you can see the reconstruction and the opening, and it's interesting that and this is how it looks today. Also, the Resi Club had to be dismantled and rebuilt in Nanterre, so we have collaborated with another organization that took over the management, Yes We Camp, so now it's relocated on another site called Les Grues in Nanterre. This is a visit of the new installment. But also other mayors found out about the project through the kind of mass media campaign that we did, and were interested in building hubs in their own neighborhoods. And this is a new hub in Bagneux that we have opened in 2019. An agrocité, again, a different configuration, and just next to it, a Resi Club, a new Resi Club that hosts also a Fab Lab. And this is the site, and this is the site, in fact, that has received this new European Bauhaus Prize that was mentioned before. And it was very interesting because there was a clear demonstration that the agrocités and this type of, let's say, alternative civic equipments had a very, very important role during the pandemic lockdown. There were bulls there, and not only ecological but also social. And something that that came to us as a necessity during this moment of crisis, and when we had to dismantle the hubs, it was this need to demonstrate the value that is created by such urban commons, which is very often neglected by city administrations, politicians, and developers, as it was the case of Colombe. So we know that the precarity of these urban commons is particularly produced by this inability to assert their value in the face of the capitalist urban private property market, with its inflated financial returns on investment. And in order to start to address this legal and financial precarity, we need a much more robust understanding of value in social, ecological, and financial terms, and also a more honest identification of the full cost and benefits they produce. And we have worked with feminist economists Catherine Gibson and Maliha Safri to calculate what we call commoning value created by the urban hubs during their functioning in Colombe. We consider that in a world where we seek to promote ecologically sustainable forms of living, value calculation needs to go beyond financial capital and commodification to include nurture and eco-maintenance. So our calculation model used the community economy return on investment tool, which is presented as a mechanism for doing this. And by conceptualizing a diverse, more than capitalist, so to say, economy, Our approach enlarged the scope of what is recognized as valuable, specifically within the context of commons, and both paid, monetized, and unpaid non-commodified labor were seen to contribute to living well, together with many other beneficial activities which contribute to expanding commons and building community economies. So a community economy is built upon a range of ethical investments in living well, distributing surplus, responsibly encountering others, consuming sustainably, and sharing our planet commons, all with a view to the future well-being of all human and non-human. So to represent the value of urban commoning in Urban, our innovation was to use money. Admittedly, the dominant metric of value in the capitalist economy, to account for the incredible volume of value, which is not monetized usually, that will be returned on an investment in commoning. And this was just as a way of comparing and demonstrating in a language that can be understood by the power. So for our Urban calculation, we took into account aspects of increased well-being, reduced ecological footprint, increased collectively controlled surplus, and increased ethical trade, and also expanded commons. And with this, calculating in detail the different economic aspects, we realized that the value that has been produced, it's enormous, much bigger in terms of return on investment than whatever return on investment is produced by a capitalist economic investment. And we have also tried to present these results in a more graphic and easy to understand format, using the economy as an iceberg model that, again, Catherine Gibson has put forward as a mode of representation in which all these values that usually are produced by commons are invisible, so are the invisible part of the iceberg. So we have put our value, our very rigorously calculated value, in the form of an iceberg to represent the value created by the different activities, and we can see that a lot of value is created by through voluntary work, unpaid work, but also through savings that these activities create to the planet or to the state. The fact that people are improving the quality of soil, reducing the consumption of water, these are savings. They are improving their health also. And we can see that in time, and they are improving also their own capacities to act. They are learning a lot of things that otherwise they would have to pay for training, in kind of established structures. So calculating all this, we realized that this invisible value, in fact, increase in time, and is the value that is created by such spaces, such sites in the city. And what we need, in fact, is a different way of understanding value of sites. And this was, I think, the message, the important message that we have to pass on to all the political kind of decision makers who are managing space in our cities. So somehow the experience of the urban hubs revealed another stage also in the social housing projects. Just as the creation of the Grand Ensemble was a political project, its regeneration involves a different kind of politics. It is a political ecology-driven regeneration, which is based on commoning processes involving directly the inhabitants and bringing back the rural into the urban, and also demonstrated that commons can be a solution for a successful social ecological transition in social housing estates, and offering insights into how architects can facilitate this process. So this experience shows also that there are still many obstacles and blockages, conflicting interests, gaps in laws and regulations for such practices to become a norm. And if it also shows that if opportunities are created for everyone to invest in and collectively reconsider the value of their action, the commons can indeed offer a concrete solution for these times of crisis. Thank you.